and welcome to Campaign at Adtech. And right now I have Mr. Kunal Sharma of KRBL with me. Kunal, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me.
Pleasure, yeah.
And I want to start by talking about this veteran who has been the brand ambassador for your company for the longest time. Firstly, can you tell me one of the best incidents or episodes or experiences that you had working with none other than the legendary Mr. Amitabh Bachchan?
No, actually, one of the things that we admired the most when we were on the shoot with him was his dedication to, completing the film. And there is so much more value that he adds to even the script in terms of what we had conceptualized and what is getting executed. So I think that's the value that a celebrity really brings to a brand when he comes on board. He's as worried about, the creative working as much as we are. So he's part of the same team. So I think that's one. Second, even at the fag end of the shoot, uh, he was working with the cameraman to make sure that the shots were coming right. He was, you know, actually moving to the cameraman's position and just checking and double checking again and again. So that speaks volumes about the kind of dedication that he brings to the table, in terms of what he does.
So you have somebody like Mr. Bachchan who has been the face of the brand for the longest time, right? But there must be certain occasions when you also need to lean into certain other KOLs so that the messaging of the brand reaches to the right kind of audiences in the right narrative.
Yeah.
What are the metrics that you use to understand who to pick, how to communicate, and which areas to tap?
So when we look at the entire approach, I think there is one very clear thing that we look at is when we are looking at reach, we look at larger order celebrities, television and reach-based mediums which take our communication to the larger masses. But having said that, it's now with a lot of data and a lot of consumer understanding, we have much more ability to create those consumer cohorts of consumers with different mindsets about food, and then with that all of that understanding we are able to create relevant cohorts of influencers, relevant cohorts of content that we can sharp target towards them. So while and just a case in point that while with Mr. Bachchan we talk about India Gate being the custodian of Indian values, through a large-scale TV commercial and connected TV and reaching out to the masses. But at the same point of time, on Women's Day, we decided to use one influencer to land the values part to a different set of consumers, the newer age consumers, in a very different relevant manner. So I'm saying, as a brand, we talk to these different set of consumers in very different ways through different set of key opinion leaders that we use on the brand. So there's no one straight-jacketed approach today, unfortunately, for a brand of our size and scale to talk to our consumers.
So you pointed out a very interesting fact, which is where you said that, for Women's Day, you worked with various other influencers or I'm guessing even chefs, right, who would take the brand messaging ahead. We are also see, and Gen Z and the younger cohorts also, but there are a lot of customer cohorts that are emerging. You have, for example, young men, bachelors who are also learning to cook, who also need a little bit of that.
Yeah.
They might be a niche part, but rice being the staple that is, they also need some kind of marketing approach which is created uniquely for them.
True.
How do you as a legacy, how does your company as a legacy company approach that kind of audience that is emerging from the sites?
Yeah, so I think as a brand, while yes, we know that there is a consumption target audience, a decision maker in the family, which given the construct of India is still largely, the homemaker or the lady of the house. But having said that, given all of these shifts that we are seeing in society, we as a brand feel the need to talk to a gender agnostic audience, right? And as to be seen as a progressive brand who while is a custodian of legacy, but at the same point of time is, progressing and taking and reinventing the whole meaning of legacy for new age consumers. So I think as a brand, that's something that we consciously attempt to do through either the choice of content, through what we are saying, and through even the choice of our influencers. Uh, uh, we subconsciously determine it. Unfortunately, today consumers don't like content to be pushed to them. They like something which comes organically to them, something that they're able to resonate with better. And the whole value system of consumers and the newer age consumers is changing very rapidly. They value brands who talk like them, who have value systems that have a significant overlap. So it's also becoming increasingly important for legacy brands to understand the mind of consumers and to take their messaging to consumers in a way that it is non-intrusive, non-pushy, I would say less pedantic, but seamlessly fitting into the lifestyle of these consumers.
And how are you able to achieve this in the digital ecosystem? Because in the digital ecosystem, whether we like it or not, it's largely push, and it's largely about grabbing the attention. So, and it's the
Yeah,
exact cohort.
yeah. No, I think from a brand lens, I think there is a shift in the way that is being looked at. I think the currency that brands like us need to look at is how much of conversation and engagement we are able to drive. Because gone are those days where you would create a commercial around a particular day, show it to people, because people are then not engaging with the content. It's something that's flowing into my mind and I'm watching it, and I maybe subliminally am, relating to it. But at the same point of time, there is much more conversations that is happening, and through conversation, engagement and participation, I think you are bringing consumers more intrinsically into the brand, and that's what as brands is the true litmus test of how well connected with your consumers you are.
Now, interestingly, while you're talking about bringing consumers to you, right, there is another aspect of the FMCG sector which is also trust.
Yeah.
So, given the very nature of the product category, trust is something that is table stakes. So, in such a situation, when you're also using your heritage, you're talking about legacy, you're talking about purity, you're talking about the quality of the ingredients that are there, which is your rice. How do you also ensure that you're constantly resonating about the trust factor to this cohort, the home
Yeah,
makers that
yeah.
is?
I think that's, uh, I would say that behind that goes in a lot of effort in terms of providing the product to the consumer with the same consistent quality every time they buy the product. So that's a fundamental basic that brands need to maintain. And a lot of effort and time goes into making sure that happens, because unless you do that, all these conversations around trust are very superficial. Uh, though we've never faced that challenge, but I think by virtue of saliency and legacy, a lot of Indian brands, and I'm not talking about India Gate only today, a lot of legacy Indian brands, by virtue of being present in the market, have trust as one of the most important things that consumers talk about when they talk about these brands. I think there is a different challenge that such brands face. Uh, I think it's very important as categories get competitive, as the more and more brands come into these categories, more in foods, is for brands to be able to create an imagery which is distinct for themselves and to own up a unique space, right? Uh, and I think that is a bigger challenge today than the challenge of trust, because trust is something that you can deliver constantly by making sure that your product delivers on the expectations of the consumer. You bring it through the best, processes, you bring it into the consumer's household, you assure them of hygiene, make sure that your hygiene content is doing that job of constantly reassuring the consumer. Uh, but I think the larger challenge is about creating that brand world which is distinct in an otherwise cluttered FMCG space today.
And how is it that your company has been able to do that? You know, like you said, fragmented, cluttered. How have you been able to create
Yeah,
it?
so I think when we look at it as a brand, and I won't say any brand has reached the end of the journey there, we are all constantly evolving. Uh, I think there are certain elements of value that a brand has. Some which are at a functional level, some which are at a emotional level, some which are at a life-changing level, and some which are at a social level. As a brand of our stature and size, we try to bring in some element of value on each of these levels. While at a functional level, like you said, it's about product quality, but maybe we as a brand don't need to talk too much about it. That's more hygiene for us, right? But at an emotional level, what value am I adding to the consumer? in terms of what they're doing. So if guests come over, I am the brand of choice. So that's an emotional support that I'm providing to the consumer, right? From an inspiration point of view, what am I doing to really inspire consumers? And for that, we talk about ourselves being the custodian of Indian values. So we inspire them to take Indian values forward. So that's the role of the brand there. And at a social level, because we are in the food space, we run a campaign called Grains of Hope, where we encourage consumers to contribute towards eradicating hunger from, you know, the, the, the students who are studying in India today through association with the midday meal scheme with the government. We have a midday meal kitchen at our plant where we feed 15,000 children every day. So through all of this, we try to, as a brand, create a differentiation versus, a clutter of brands that are there in the market. So
That's a very nice stand that you have taken as a
yeah.
company. But moving on from there to another pet peeve or whatever one may call it, which is the complexities in the marketing space and the profusion of data
Yeah.
which is now cluttering up the life of any marketer. Now, what it has made is that it has made life challenging and it has made life interesting for any
Hmm.
marketer. So I would like to understand from you, how has it made life challenging for you and how has it made life interesting for you?
I think one of the things that as a marketer and as a CMO I've always believed is the fact that content still rules. So what you play out to consumers is the most critical thing, right? And yes, what are you saying needs to really add value to the consumer. Beyond that, today as a marketer, as marketers, we are all spoiled for choices. We have data, and I think there's a profusion of that, which somewhere in the minds of marketers also sometimes tends to confuse us in terms of, because at the end of the day, see, budgets have not grown at a level for brands as much as the choices have proliferated, right? So I think it's very important for marketers to make those choices and do what they do well, because also as a marketer, there is a temptation to do a lot. But at the same point of time, through data or through gut, you've got to make those conscious choices on what's right for the brand. Do that consistently and significantly for a period of time before you assess whether that's adding value to the brand. So I think I look at these fundamental basics: doing things consistently, doing things significantly, not just doing a single influencer on a particular day is really going to move some metric for the brand, until unless you do it consistently over a period of time. So I think it's a fairly amorphous world. I don't think the world is going to get any more definitive than for a marketer in the future. So I think I somewhere feel that a lot of attribution now is going to go to the CMO or the marketing team in terms of the work that they've done, the choices that they've made, and what results it's gotten onto the brand. So yeah.
So in this kind of a amorphous world that you just described, you also mentioned that, giving a certain percentage of your marketing budget for experimentation,
Right.
which is so that you can understand what sticks and what doesn't.
Yeah.
But how do you also decide, which of the experiments to scale up and which of them you need to sunset? Because you need to give it some period and
Yeah,
breathing room.
yeah. No. I think as marketers, one of the reasons I feel we are not able to judge the effect of what we are doing is because we don't define the metrics that that particular intervention is supposed to influence. For example, if the objective is to drive conversations, then I'll measure conversations. I can't start measuring sale against it. So I think one is to fix what metric are we going to measure, and and obviously you'll do it provided that metric is important to you. Once you've done that, then you start measuring that. If you've done it and it's done well, I start expanding scale of that activity. So just as a case in point, we figured out that on Women's Day, we were able to drive engagement, right, to a very disproportionate level. So we'll look at now more entry points into the consumer's life in terms of where I can drive those conversations and keep calibrating whether it's working for me. But until and unless I do it at scale and I do it consistently, I'll not be able to, tell you whether it's worked for me or not. So that's how we look at it.
Well, great. That's all I wanted to understand from you. And last thing is that you mentioned about Women's Day.
Yeah.
You mentioned that how it's one of the high points in your marketing calendar. And festive definitely is the other, big ticket period that is there, the peak period. Which are the other high points that probably you have not really explored, but which are there like not low hanging but mid hanging fruits?
See, I think one of the things that is propelling this brands to take on IPs and create IPs around is the fact that you create noise at a certain level during a period of time, and that really helps you. So certain brand wants to own up Women's Day or contextually do something else. Everybody's doing this. I think the idea is that there is so much noise and clutter, and all brands have finite budgets, so they want to shout out at the time they are visible to the consumer. So that's what's driving it. I think there is no right or wrong answer to that. What are the other consumption or what are the other right points of entry? Every brand kind of evolves there. Classic case in point is I take Cadbury's as a classic where they've created something out of Valentine's Day. One of the things that I believe is that there has to be a baseline consumer insight led occasion rather than creating newer days for consumers or newer moments, because that is very difficult to do as brands independently. So when we look at the calendar of events, we look at, is New Year's a relevant conversation to drive? Is Diwali the right conversation, or is Eid, which is a consumption for the category as well as conversations around the category, is that the relevant point? So I don't think we work with a very rigid calendar that these are the only. As marketers, that's the good part of it, that you can keep evaluating entry points into the consumer at every stage and start doing that.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and speaking to campaign. It was an absolute pleasure.
Pleasure for me too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.